Okay, let me get my screens. We got. You can't see me. That's not good. You can see me, Shuki? No. I can't hear you.
I think you just flipped it.
Yes, I did. Yeah. And let me do this. My challenge here is that here's this problem, Shuki. We have to go through the globe. And then this is my teacher, Rabbi Yosef. And then we have these pictures. Don't ask. Okay. Do the best I could. If the Zoom won't be so good, it's going to be very good on the video, okay? It's going to be very good on the video.
That's fine. I'm happy to watch it twice.
Okay. Oh. Then when I sit down, you'll go like this, just to get me and just the white. Yeah. This is big enough. Let me make sure this works. Galgal Hachi, Shemesh, Tzei Galgal in the Shemesh, the Goyva Shemesh. So
you can always add that the Galgal Hachi needs the Galgal Hayonga because it makes every day a full circle and it takes the whole world, everything what's inside.
okay. All right, good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam, which is Hilches Kiddush HaChodesh Prakim Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, and Yud Daled. A big Yasher Koyach from myself, from Chabad Zola, from Chabad.org to my dear teacher that I love, Mamish Ahava Batalmud Tzadevin, Rabbi Yosef Lush, who is my teacher, not only in the dinim of Kiddush HaChodesh, of what Ayid means, to learn the Simcha and to teach what you know. So I have the merit to be in their house in Crown Heights. So I have the opportunity to use his famous props that we are learning for 40 years to understand these dinim. And I'll be as kitzurdik, as quick as I could be. And here on the video, there's the advantage of pausing, of going back. And the biggest Yasher Koyach is I have my teacher with me, which is very important. So if I say something that's wrong, he's going to correct me. So like God, you can't see, but some people hear. If you hear a voice, that's my teacher. All right. Now, introduction number one. Introduction number one is that we place the world in the center of everything. Beruchnius abada, because the purpose of creation is for us, is for Yidden to keep the mitzvahs. And since that's the kavanah, it's not just beruchnius, but we actually place this earth in the center of everything that's out there. And then we are going to put around the earth something that we will call a galgal. A galgal is transparent. A galgal is not an orbit. A galgal is very much like this prop. As you see, there is a ball that goes all the way around the earth, 360 degrees. That is what we refer to our galgal. At some point in the atmosphere, when you go up, you are exiting the audits and you're going into the galgal of the Levana. There is no space in between the earth and the Galgal number 1, no space between Galgal number 2 to Galgal number 3. We in the Torah will first categorize 7 Galgalim, in which we have the Shiva Koich Malachas, which are the seven moving planets. We're not going to speak about all 7, not Negeya. We are going to be speaking exclusively first about the sun and then about the moon. The moon is going to be in the first Galgal relative to the earth. The sun is going to be in the 4th Galgal relative to the earth. And after you have the 7th Galgal, which is Saturn, which is Shapsai, then you have a tremendous amount of space. But since for our learning, it's not Negeya, we're going to call everything else the 8th Galgal. The 8th Galgal is infinitely longer, bigger, deeper than all of the 7. But it's the 7 and the 8. Now, when we are standing on the earth and we will look up, since the Galgalim are transparent, whether there's the Levana, which is in the closest Galgal around the earth, whether you're looking at a star that's all the way far away in the 8th Galgal, the sizes will appear different, but they're all going to look together. It's going to be like a painting because the Galgalim are transparent. Now, what's Gavaldik is this idea. Outside the 8th Galgal, whether you call that Makom, whether you don't call that Makom, we're going to say that outside the 8th Galgal, you have what's out there. What is out there is what we refer to either as the Galgal Hachi or as the Galgal Hayomi. Step number 1, this is very important. The imagery that the Eibishter allows us to see from all of the 8 Galgalim, which is the 8th Galgal and all the Shiva Koich Malachas, all of that has an appearance to us. Project that out into the 9th Galgal. There's nothing in the 9th Galgal. But whenever we're going to be speaking about the 9th Galgal or the Galgal Hayomi, it's our mind's projection of everything that's in here to out there. And that is what we are referring to when we speak about the Mazolos. The Mazolos are the constellations. What do we mean by the Mazolos? That there is a certain image, maybe not now as the Rambam writes in the times of the Mabul. It's not Negeh. That when you look at the main belt of the stars, as all of them together are projected in the 9th Galgal, they form certain imageries. And the names that we give, beginning with Teleh, is what at some point in history, the sum total of the stars appeared to us to look like a Teleh. Now, every sphere is divided into 360 degrees. The space, the distance between one degree and the other varies. It can be very little and it can be billions of miles. Because the bigger the sphere, the more distance you have to travel to go all the way around. And always remember that there's a big difference between a maila and between distance. There's shatach and a maila. Shatach is distance. A maila means a degree. How much distance is there between every degree and the other? It depends. But every Galgal will only have 360 degrees. And whenever you hit 361, to simplify things, you never say 361, you say number 1. Because once you go back to the beginning, then you begin all anew. The Earth has an equator. What's shot an equator? That when something, the center of the Earth that we refer to is the center between north and south. Now, we have over here Rabbi Losh's globe, and from where I'm standing, we're going to place Mizrach, what's in front of me. Ma'ariv is what's behind me, which means north will be to my left and south will be to my right. Hashem made the world in a way that the Galgal Hachi, which is the Galgal Hayomi, which is moving and it's schlepping with it all of the inner Galgalim, is moving. I'm giving approximate numbers, 361 degrees every 24 hours. Not 360. 361, it's not exact, but it's approximate. So, which means the Earth is not moving. The Earth is stationary. All of the Galgalim, every single one, even though we're going to add something very, very important, every one is being moved by the 9th Galgal. The 9th Galgal is in Yiddish schlepping, carrying, moving everything with it. And it's moving from east to west, from Mizrach to Ma'ariv, be'erech 361 degrees every 24 hours. Now, the Gavaldik, the beauty here is like this. Even though the 9th Galgal is affecting all of the inner Galgalim, but they're not stuck together in a way where each Galgal only has that movement. In addition to the movement of the Galgal Hayomi, every single Galgal has its own movement. The truth is that many of the Galgalim have many mini Galgalim in them, as we'll see. We'll speak about the sun, we'll speak about the moon. But before we get into the breakdown, into the details, the bigger picture, that every Galgal has its own movement, and it's actually, in many of them, they are moving in the opposite direction of the Galgal Hayomi. So let's speak about the Galgal of the sun. The Galgal of the sun, into which is the sun affixed. You have to just have this image. What's moving the sun? The sun is not moving. The Galgal of the sun is moving the sun. The sun is in the Galgal of the sun. The Galgal, again, doesn't mean an orbit. It doesn't mean a circle. It doesn't mean a track. It means a 360 transparent mitzias that is in existence, even though it's not physical, and the Rambam says it has intelligence. However, you'll understand that the Galgal of the sun is moving. I'm giving approximate numbers, 1 degree a day. As we'll see in the beginning of chapter 12, it's not 1 degree. We'll see from one way of looking at it, it's 59 degrees plus a little bit, but be'erach 1 degree. So now understand. 59, a little bit less than 1 degree, 59 chalakim and 8 shniyos. That's a thank you, Rabbi Zajac. So let me say like this. If everything is moving 361, which means the Galgal of the sun, aside of the fact that it has its own movement, it's going 361. The Noisa Balzeh, it's going backwards, it's going the opposite direction from Ma'ariv to Mizrach, 59 chalakim, or around 1 degree. Now, parenthetically, as we should know by now, that the 360 degrees in the Holy Tongue is going to be called milas. Every degree is broken down into chalakim. Every degree has 6D chalakim. Every chelek is further broken down into shniyos, which 60, making up that each one times 360. As the Rambam says, these numbers were chosen because all of the mathematical calculations that we need to make becomes facilitated if we begin with the 360 or with the 60. This is something that has to be understood properly, even though the Rambam doesn't write it, but I would say that the biggest teaching that we all benefit from Rabbi Zajac is that this has to be properly understood to really be able to get all the rest. Now, the Galgal of the sun. The Galgal of the sun is comprised of 2 Galgal. Before we go there, one more introduction before the Galgal of the sun. The Galgal Hayomi, as you see over here, is moving from east to west, 361. So let me speak again about the equator. The equator is the line that's in between north and south. Let's move the equator all the way up to the Galgal Hayomi. This is going to be the line over here. Whoever is watching the video of the Galgal Hayomi, which is on top of the equator of the earth. The stars that we are projecting in the Galgal Hachi also has a center, but it's not the same center. It's not the same center. You have to be able to see it. When you see it, it's easy. What I mean is that if you can look at the globe, you see the black line of the mazolos. That's the equator of the mazol. That's the center of the mazolos. And let me explain why this is so important to understand. The sun is really only traveling around 1 degree a day relative to the mazolos. The sun is traveling, for me, for you, on this Olam Haza Agashmi, every 24 hours it's going 360. I know that. Because when you combine both movements together, you add, you subtract, 360. But if you take us out for a moment, that's the biggest avodah is to take the self out. So let's just think about how the sun looks vis-a-vis the mazolos. If you would be living in the mazolos, where is the sun on you? We said the sun is traveling around 1 degree every day from west to east. We're going to begin the year with the month of Nisan, which is also going to be referred to as the tkufa of spring. the Nissan, the formation of the mazel for the next 30 degrees is going to be mazel toleh. We have 12 mazalos. Every mazel for you to have totaling 360, right? So what do you have? 360 divided by 12 is 30, which means every mazel occupies 30 milas in the Galgalachi or in any other area, 30 milas. When we are saying that the sun is traveling around 1 mile every day, that means that it will take 30 days for the sun to enter the next mazel. The tkufa of spring / summer begins when the sun is in the beginning of mazel toleh. Now, since the equator of the mazalos are not the same equator of the earth, you have to see this, and guys, we'll review this. We're going to learn the Shavuos night. So don't worry, and if you're watching the video, watch it again. What's really happening is that the sun that's traveling under the center of the mazalos, not over the equator, it's going to be moving as you go from spring into summer. It's going to be moving north and north and north away from the equator. The total amount of miles off the equator, max that the sun will reach, either in the north in the summer or in the south in the winter, is around 23.5 degrees. This explains why it's hotter summer in the northern hemisphere, why it's hotter in the summer in the southern hemisphere. But that's not the focus of what we're learning right now. Having said all this, now we are ready to move on to the Galgal of the sun. We said the Galgal of the sun is the fourth Galgal. Doesn't matter what number it is. And let me explain the final bigger intro to understand what we are getting at. What are we getting at? Why are we learning all this? First of all, it's the Torah. Second of all, they never told us to learn the Rambam. But we're learning all this ultimately to know when will we see the Moilad. The word Moilad means giving birth. Giving birth to what? So this is what's happening. Since the moon has no light of its own, at least not until Mashiach's coming, what's going to happen then, we'll find out what it means. We say by Kiddush L'Mala that it's going to go back to the way it used to be. The moon is only reflecting the light of the sun. So it's possible to understand that for me to see the reflection from the sun off the moon, I have to be seeing the part of the moon that's seeing the sun. What do I mean by that? So if you are standing over here in this beautiful prop, you're standing on the earth, and you're looking up. The moon is going to be in the first Galgal. The sun is going to be on the Galgal above it. If the sun and the moon are going to be exactly one over the other, you are under the moon, you are not seeing any part of the moon that's seeing the sun. Yeah, the moon is reflecting the light back, but not to you, not to me, back to the sun. Only when the moon is off, it goes away from the sun, it's traveling, as we'll see, as we mentioned, be'erech. If the sun is traveling around 1 degree a day, the moon is traveling around 13 degrees, but don't forget, it's only 12 degrees apart, because the sun is also moving one. So that's, again, around very approximate 12 degrees away from each other every day. In around 30 days, you're back to square zero, back to square one, back to ground zero. Sun, moon, I'm on the bottom. When they are aligned, I'll see nothing. Since the moon is going faster than the sun around 12 degrees, it's going 13, but it's going faster than the sun around 12. So every day, you see it's 12 degrees. 2 days, 24 degrees. And as it goes away from the sun, there is more of the moon that's facing the sun that will be facing us as well. What's the full moon? The full moon means is that the moon is now under the earth. Of course, not exactly aligned. That will be a lunar eclipse, but not exactly. And we'll see how difficult it is to be exact. If it's off by a hairbreadth, from that distance, it's completely off, then we're going to see all of the moon that's seeing the sun. Now, guys, another thing. The sun is traveling from west to east. I know it sounds very funny. You get used to it. The moon is traveling from west to east, So let me ask you guys a question. Yakir, how come when the sun and the moon became aligned. And now to see the new moon, who will be ahead of whom? Who is going to be more west than whom? The sun is going to be more west than the moon. Means in the beginning of the month, we are watching everything move from east to west. That's the funny part of it. But really, the sun and the moon are going in the opposite directions. If the moon is running quicker than the sun, if it's moving quicker than the sun, and they're going to east, that means the new moon is when the moon went east of the sun. Now, when you have sunset, where does the sun set? In the west, in the western horizon. When will it be possible to see the new moon? It's not only is that right after sunset, right? You have in the beginning lesser degrees. As time goes on, you have more and more degrees. Sunset, immediate moonset, you'll see nothing. The more time you have in between sunset and moonset, the more is the chance that you'll be able to see the moon. And indeed, in the beginning of the month, it will always be the same thing. You will always notice that the moilad will only be seen in the western horizon and very close to the horizon. If you're seeing it, if the moon is setting a few hours after the sun set, you're not in the beginning of the month. And in the middle of the month, the moment the sun, it's going to be on opposite sides. When the sun is going to set, then from the eastern horizon, the moon is going to rise. Okay, having said all that, now with the mechila of my teacher, he's going to mamash help me with the Iker, which is the Torah, and now with a couple of pictures that are needed to end the intro to the 12th chapter. This was an intro to the whole concept. Oh, now guys, listen. We're looking for the Moilad. Moilad means when is the moon under the sun? And obviously a short amount of time afterwards, as we explained, since the moon is running quicker than the sun, we will be able to see the moon. The goal of this is to know when the Moilad will be able to be visible. Of course, if there's clouds, you won't see it. Of course, every part of the world has a different Moilad. Of course. We're speaking about the Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land. And there is, when you know the cheshbon of how the sun is moving, how quick, and where will it appear to you when you're standing on the earth, when you're going to then know how quick the moon is moving. Where will it appear to you, to me, when we're standing over here? When we put that together, then we will know how to come to the moon. When we speak about where is the sun, we begin with where is the sun vis-a-vis the mazolas, as we said in the beginning. You have the projection of the 9th Galgal, and the sun is moving relative to the mazolas around 1 degree a day, from west to east. But that's not enough to know where the sun is. There are many other facts that you have to know to be able to appreciate what you need to know where the sun is. So step number one. Step number one is the galgal of the sun itself is comprised of 2 galgal. It's not 1 galgal. And here is the picture that I'm going to try to use the zoom over here. This is very important. The Rabbi Losh is going to somehow get this over here. I hope you can see this. The blue is the galgal of the sun. You just pick up the whole thing. You pick up the whole thing. That's it. Inside the blue, there is the red, which is a galgal inside the galgal. There are 2 things that's happening here. Number one, this movement, the speed of the red and the blue are not the same. They are both moving in the same direction, but it's not the same. When we're going to say, as we mentioned, that the galgal of the sun is moving approximately 1 degree a day, that's the sum total of both of these galgalim. But for the cheshbonis that we'll need to make in this chapter, you'll have to separate the movement of the blue and the movement of the red. Number 2, the red is not in the center of the blue. The red is not in the center of the blue. The galgalim have the earth in the center. The galgal of
Rabbi,
the sun.
Galgalim considered to be 1 unit or 2 separate units?
It's amazing, a miracle, it's a paradox. Every galgal is its own unit, but the movement of the ninth galgal is affecting all of the galgalim. The movement of the ninth galgal is affecting the galgal of the sun. Even though all of the galgalim above it, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the eighth have movements. So they are connected, but they remain independent.
Amazing.
And these two galgalim, Yakir, the movement of the blue affects the movement of the red. The blue is moving very slow. We'll see the numbers inside. The red is moving, when we speak about around the 1 degree, most of that movement is the red. But you have to know the sum total to get the right number. Now, why is this important? The earth is in the center of the blue. The earth is not in the center of the red. The red has a different center. Number two, the height. If the height, we're going to make this north where I'm pointing with my finger. All right. The sun is in the middle of the red. When the sun is in the middle of the red, this part, when the red is here in the blue, it's higher from the earth. The goiva of the sun is higher from the earth than when the sun is going to be in this part of the red, where it's going to be much closer to the earth. The center of the red is not blue. The center of the red affects the goiva hashemesh. Now, why do I care that the sun sometimes de facto will be much higher away from the earth, much, and sometimes much closer? That's not that much connected to summer, winter at all. Ironically, you can have the sun the farthest away in the height, and it can be summer. It's not a contradiction at all. It has a very little effect on the heat, but it will affect the following. Now, guys, get familiar with the words. I'm going to sit down, and then we'll come back. We're going to come back to this in a moment. Now, Rabbi Zajac, if you can put this back down and make a, here we go. Is the white in the back?
Yeah.
You want to drape maybe? Okay. Now, here's the following. Get familiar with this. You have, when we're asking, where is the sun? Where is the sun vis-a-vis the mazalas? And you're going to give an answer. Well, it's in the first degree of Mazel Tov. That answer is very tricky. Why is it very tricky? Because since, as we showed in the picture, the center of the red, which is the center of where the sun is north sometimes. We're going to always speak about when it is north, even though this is changing the whole time. But when it is in the north of the blue, it's going to be up to 2 degrees further north than the center of the earth. Where the sun is going to be placed vis-a-vis itself, forget about the earth and its center. So the sun is the first degree in Mazel Tov. That will not be how it appears when we're standing on planet Earth. So first we're going to have to learn where the sun is vis-a-vis its own movement. But then we're going to have to translate that. How does that look for us? And it's not going to be in the same location. If you can rewind this and look at the picture of the red over here. If I'm standing over here, you can see this, and the sun is over here. Just think about it. I'm looking up. Can you guys see this? And the sun will be over here. I'm going to be looking up to my left to see it. I have to look up to the left. I would be standing in the center of the sun. I would not look up at all. I would look straight. And don't forget, Chavre, that this is where the mazolas are, in the 9th Galgal. So it's amazing. So think about it. If the sun is here, where is it in the mazolas? If I'm looking at it from this angle, I'm going to see it here. If I'm looking at it from this angle, to me, it will appear it's in a whole different place. Not very far away, but 2 degrees will make a huge difference when it comes to our goal, which is ultimately to know when the moilats is going to be. The moilot is only after the moon went away a little bit from the sun. You have to know where the sun is first concerning itself. You have to know where the moon is concerning itself. And then you're going to have to know, how does it look to us? Whenever we speak about the sun's location vis-a-vis itself, we're going to be calling that the mahalach ha'emtsoi. Whenever we're going to be speaking about where does the sun appear for us, that's called the mahalach hamiti. The cheshbon of the moilad has to be based on the mahalach hamiti. But in order for you to know where it is in the mahalach hamiti, first you have to know where it is vis-a-vis the sun by itself. Again, the sun and the earth don't have the same center. Because of that, you have to first speak about the sun. Now, where is the center of the sun? Well, it depends where the height of the red is. And it doesn't always remain in the same location. And as we'll see the numbers in a moment. So you have to establish first, where is the height of the sun? To understand the difference between where the sun appears in the mazolos, if you would have been in the center of the sun, and then you have to know how to bring it down to how it looks for us, or how it looks for us. So Rabbi Zajac has a very good mashal. The sun speaks one language. Think about it. You have a person speaking English. The moon is speaking Portuguese, a different language. They can't communicate to each other. So what do you need to do? You have to translate the language of the sun to the holy tongue. Then you have to take the language of the moon and translate it into the holy tongue. And now you can combine one with, you can communicate one to the other. This is a foundational concept that you have to understand before you learn this chapter. The goiva hashemesh, being that it's not equal always around the earth, is extremely important. And you have to know now 2 steps. Where is it concerning the emtsoi, which means where is the sun if I would have been in the center of the red? And then I'll have to figure out, how do I translate that? How does the sun look to me vis-a-vis the mazolos if I'm standing on planet Earth, and we're calling that the amiti? The emes is, there's no emes. In other words, it's all relative. But on the other hand, the emes is a yid keeping the mitzvahs. So the cheshbon that the Torah needs from me, that's the emes, because that is what counts. The earth is in the center. It's ironic that the emes is not the sun, how the sun sees itself. The sun sees itself is a sheket, the way we see ourselves. That's not the emes. There's a deeper emes, the way the Oibusher sees us, the way Yiddishkeit, the way the Torah sees us. That's the emes. Okay. Now, final introduction, which is really very big. The sun is traveling every day, we mentioned, around 1 degree. These numbers are very approximate. If you were to translate that in miles, the sun is traveling every day around 1.5 million miles, but every day exactly the same number of miles. Exactly the same number of miles. Does that mean that it's traveling, from your perspective, the same amount of degrees every day? What do you guys think? If the sun is traveling every day the same number of miles, does that mean that it's therefore covering the same shetach? The answer is no.
Not necessary.
Dafka not. This is also connected to the fact that there's a goiva hashemesh. If it would be no goiva hashemesh, it would be traveling exactly the same amount of degrees. But since the goiva hashemesh varies, sometimes the sun is higher up, so to say, vis-a-vis the earth, which is not in the center. Sometimes the sun is closer vis-a-vis the earth. Even though it's traveling the same number of miles, it's going to cover a different amount. If it's farther away, then the same 1.5 million miles is going to cover less ground. Less degrees. Less shetach, less degrees, not less shetach, not less ground, less degrees. Very good, thank you. And if the sun again, which is not around the world. The world is off center from the sun, from the red picture that we have. If it's closer, the same amount of miles, which is shetach, will cover many, many more degrees. And again, you have to know what degree is the sun in the mazalos. First, in vis-a-vis the sun itself, the emtsoi. Then, cheshboning, how do you translate that in the amiti to really know where the sun is? So today, from the 3 chapters, the 12th and the 13th chapter, we spoke out by heart, mamish. And that's going to help us know how to find the place amiti of the sun by going through first the emtsoi and the amiti and the goiva hashemesh and all of the numbers that the Rambam makes the cheshbonis easy for us to do. And then we'll give another shorter introduction before we learn today's 3rd chapter, which is the 14th chapter, which will begin speaking about the moon, which is much more complicated than the sun. You know, men are like the sun and women are like the moon. Who's more complicated? That all comes from over here. Okay, so Perek Shnei Masor has a total of, I think, only 2 halachas. And let us start with halacha aleph. Yeah, Zok the Rambam. Okay, Rabbi, big again. Just whoever's jumping in right now, really, on behalf of all of us, a big thank you. Halacha aleph. Mahalach Hashem emtsoi b'yom echad. The distance of what the sun is covering vis-a-vis the mazalas, and emtsoi means as it is, as it sees itself. As it sees itself, here for the Zoom, as it sees itself means, here are the mazalis, the black is the mazalis. We are here on the black, but since the sun, where the sun is in the red galgal, inside the blue galgal, the center of the red is not the center of the earth. So you have to first make believe that you're living here, which we're not. And as the sun is moving, if I'm looking at the sun and I want to give it an address at the mazalis, where is it by the mazalis? And then I'll have to learn how to bring it down to where it looks like to me, which is what we're going to call the amiti. The amiti is what it looks like to me, and the emtsoi is how it sees itself in the center of the sun itself. And every day is comprised of 24 hours. That's very important, as we'll see in a moment. Not before Shkia, after Shkia. No, because Shkia changes every day. Tisha v'chamishim chalakim, 59 chalakim. We mentioned that every mila is divided into 16. So it's actually a little bit less than 1 degree plus 8. And the siman is nun tesches. Nimtza mahalcham. Now I want you to know that the nun tesches is not the movement of the red, and it's not the movement of only the blue. It's the movement of both of them together. When you combine their movement, it's going to be nun tesches. Why is it so important to chop the red and the blue? And I said in the beginning that the blue has a different speed than the red, because the goiva hashemesh, which is always going to be over here, which is always going to be, that's the place that's the furthest away from the earth. The furthest away is here. The blue is moving. So is the goiva hashemesh on Sarton, or is it in the north? Or is goiva hashemesh in the south? Well, it's going to constantly be changing, even though it's changing very slowly. So the movement of the blue, the red, the goiva hashemesh is always here on the blue, but where is the blue? So as the blue is moving, it's going to be accordingly in that direction. All right. We said nun tesches. Every 10 days, it's going to cover Teisha, Milos, Ve'echad, Ve'chalakim, V'shalish, Ve'esrim Shniyos, and V'simonem, Tino, Chag. V'nimsa mahalcha b'meya yom shmoyne, V'tisha Milos, V'shloshim Chalakim, V'shalish, Ve'chamishim Shniyos, Simonem Tzach Lagnak. V'nimsa she'eris mahalcha be'elef yom, Achar shetachlis kol sholish meis v'shishim Milos, K'moshe B'yarnu, we already mentioned in our intro, that the moment you hit 360 degrees, you don't say when you make these calculations 361. You're back to 1. You're back to the beginning. It's going to be a total of Masayim b'chamesh v'shisha milos v'shmoyna u'shloishim chalakim v'chamishim shniyos simanim rasa lachak V'nimtza she'eres mahalcha ba'aseres alafim yoim is going to be mei v'sheishu shloisha mailos u'shmoine v'esim chalokim v'esim shniyah simanam kuf lamed vav chachak. Valderech hazois tichva v'toitzi mahalcha l'chol niyan shetirtza v'chein im tirtza lasi simanam yidor eslecha l'mahalcha only for 2 days, small amounts of time. U'l'shloishu u'l'arba ad asora tas v'chein im tirtza lislecha simanam yidor muchanim l'mahalcha l'esim yoim u'l'shloishu u'l'arba yoim ad meya tasa. As long as you know the exact movement every day, movement means where is the sun vis-a-vis the mazolis? Where is the sun vis-a-vis me? Every 24 hours it moved the whole thing. I know that. Not vis-a-vis me. Where is the sun relative to the mazolis? Relative to the mazalachi? There you go. Now, which is around a month, and also why are we giving that number? Because that's a year. That's a lunar year. Which is also called the Sana Sedura. When you have these numbers easily ready for you, it's going to help you come right away to know when the Moilot is going to be. Because everything that we're learning is to figure out when the Moilot is going to be. Will never be less than 29 days and not more. As we'll see later, you can't see the moon by the moilad. You need at least 6 hours at least to see the moon. A month is really 29 days and a half a day plus. So that's why he's saying 29 days, because you needed some hours for the moon to be visible. It's never going to be less than 29 days later. The reason why we are learning all of this astronomy is for the goal of knowing when will it be possible to see the Moilad. Now, that's why the Rambam is not going to tell us the movements of all the other koichei, which are very complex. There are many parts of astronomy that the Rambam will leave out because the purpose of all of these halachas is only to know when the Moilad is. But for that, you will have to, by the sun, not know how quick is it moving, the ikir, because since we have a goiva hashemesh, that creates the challenge of it's not moving vis-a-vis the mazolis. There isn't an absolute address. If you are in the center of the sun, there's one address. If you are in the center of the earth, there's another address. And the only way you get to what it looks like to us is by knowing where it looks like to itself, and then knowing how to translate that into Lashon HaKodesh, which is to the Mahalach Hamid. But you have to begin with the Mahalach Hamid. During the Shana Sedura or Shana B'Yom Echad, the Chem B'Chol Shana B'Shana, and the Rambam is going to give you all the numbers. U'Mahalach Hashem Eshloim Tzoi L'Tisha V'Eslim Yoyim Shmoyne V'Eslim Mailis V'Chamishim V'Shloishim V'Chalokim V'Shniya Achas. That's the real movement. It's amazing, which is Chav Ches Lamed Hey Aleph U'Mahalach Shana Sedura Shalosh Meis V'Shmoyne V'Avoyim Mailis V'Chamishim V'Chamishim Chalokim V'Chamesh Esri Shniyos Simonim Samach Nah Yam. Halacha Beis, which is also the final halacha of this chapter, says that Rambam Nakuda Achas Yesh Begalgal Hashemesh V'chein B'Shar Galgal Yamshich.
Halacha Aleph was correlate to which part of the introduction, Rabbi? Because
everything Aleph was telling you have to know before we come to knowing where the sun is vis-a-vis the mazolas. From our perspective, you have to know where is the sun on the mazolas vis-a-vis the center of the sun's perspective. So the numbers of how much does it move every day, and like we mentioned in the introduction, that since the Goiva Hashemesh is off center, how much does it move every day? As far as the Mahalach Hamtzoy is concerned, the same exact amount. But as far as the Mahalach Hamiti is concerned, there will not be the same amount of degrees, because when it's the Goiva Hashemesh is further away from us, it's going to cover less degrees, and when it's closer, it's going to cover more degrees. Now, halacha base. Nekuda achas yesh v'galgal hashemesh. L'chein b'shar galgali asher kechav. Be'esh yia koichav bo yia gavoyim al oretz kol ma'odoi. That's the goyva hashemesh. That's the red in the blue. V'oisa nekuda asher galgal hashemesh. And if you're listening to it, Cheder, you have to go on Chabad.org to see these pictures that Rabbi Losh drew, and they're amazing. And they're already a bit antiquated. They're a bit, they have some longevity on them. I think he painted them up 40 years ago, but they're still functioning. With the Scotch tape, mit alle gute Sachen. Yellow Scotch tape. The Rambam is speaking now about the movement of the blue, that it moves in around every 70 years, only 1 degree. The height means where the red has the least blue on top and the most blue underneath it. Verstehst? That's called the goiva. Now, the red is stuck, so to say, in the blue. But the beauty is, since the blue, which is also going from west to east, not the way it looks, the blue is also going from west to east, is moving, taka very, very slowly, but it's moving. As it moves, it's moving the goiva hashemesh from it being, let's say, in the north, ultimately to it being in the south, and keep on dreng sich around, making the circles, making our coffers. Just to know, one of the things that a Yid gets from learning this is to see the greatness of God and the koyach of God, and the fact that the amount of distance that it's covering, because the amount of distance is regardless whether you are in the center of the Emtsoy, whether you're looking at the Amiti, is exactly every day the same. And what we know here is that people's koyach gets stronger. That was before we were 30 or 40 or 50, 60, 70. And then your koyach gets weaker. There are fluctuations. To appreciate how every day is exactly the same, that's, you see the power of the infinite. Rabbi Lush told me that the Tzemach Tzedek said, if you think about how the Galgal Hachi is affecting all of the Galgalim, it's also affecting the Galgal, the Galgal of the sun. It's not directly touching the Galgal of the sun. There are other Galgalim in between it. Those other Galgalim have complete other movements, complete different movements. And yet the koyach of the Galgal Hachi is affecting equally all of what's in it. You see the koyach mafli lasos, you see that God is everywhere. And therefore God's effect, like soivid, this is like a soivid, because it's like a koyach that goes around. That the koyach ha-soivid is taka equal everywhere. It's mashva katan v'gadol. It affects the outermost, the innermost, the farthest, the closest, all the same. It's unbelievable. Okay, guys, we just covered the first little shtickle at halacha base. So we spoke about the blue, the outer galgal of the sun. The red is the inner galgal, and that is what creates the goiva hashemesh. Goiva hashemesh mahalche b'chol asara yomim shniya achas v'chatzi shniya, which is shloishim u'shlishiyos. And imsa mahalche b'mei yom chamesh esri shniyos, u'mahalche b'elef yom shnei chalokim u'shloishim shniyos, u'mahalche b'aseres alofim yom chamisha v'esrim chalokim. And imsa mahalche l'tisha v'esrim yom arba shniyos, u'mahalche b'shana sedura sholish ha'chamishim shniyos. Kvar omarnu, says the Rambam, sho'ikar sh'lemenu ascholu b'cheshbon zeh. Now the Rambam is giving us something very practical. Again, we're asking, when will the moilad be? Okay, where is the sun? Where is the moon? We're focusing on the sun. I'll give you a simple thing. If I want to know where the sun is today, give me one objective date. The Rambam gave a date of his lifetime, Mistama, when he was writing these halachas. Give a date. Say that on this date, the sun was exactly in that location in the Mazolis. And now, when the Rambam is writing a big part of these chapters, how much to add every 10 days, how much to add every 20 days, etc., you have a beginning point. This is the Rambam's beginning point. The beginning point is Mitchilas Leil Chamishi, Sheyoimoy Shlishi Lachodesh Nisan, Bishna Shmoina Ushloishim Utsham Meis Va'arbas Alofim Liyetzira, Umokaim Hashemish B'Mahalcha wasn't exactly north. At this date of the beginning point, the highest part of the sun, the top of the red, was B'Sheva Mailos Ushloisha Chalokim Ushnaim Ushloishim Shniyos Mamazal Toleh. Simonim Zag Lag. So which means that when you lived around in the times of the Rambam, you have a starting point. You know exactly where the sun is, the Mahalech HaEmtsoi. We'll learn later how to translate it in the Amiti. But first, you know in the Emtsoi itself, how many days, how many mazolas did it move? Umakam goiva hashemesh roi beikar zeh b'sheish ve'esrim mailos v'chamishim abarim chalokim u'shmoyne shniyas v'mazal to'imim simonim chavav mahach. Therefore, now it's simple. Kishatirza leida makam hashemesh v'mahalcham tzoi b'chol zman shetirza tikach minyan hayomin. From the beginning date that he just gave, shemitchilas yom ha'ikar ad hayom shetirza, and v'toitzi mahalcha ha'emtzoi, you always have to begin by learning where the sun is vis-a-vis the sun. V'oisa hayomim min hasimanim shloi daimu. V'toisev hakoil alo ikar, utekabetz kol min minoi, v'hayoytze hu makam hashemesh v'mahalcham tzoi lo isa yoyim. Numbers, Kate said, for example, Hadei sherotzino leida makam hashemesh v'mahalcham tzoi b'tchilas leil haShabbos. שיומר בו עשה יום לחודש תמוז בשנה זו, שישנסו עיקר מצאנו, מניין היום מיום עיקר עד תחילת יום זה, שנה בעצם לידה במקום שמש בוי, 100 days. המחייב. So now we just apply the numbers from the starting point. לקחנו אמצע מהלכה למאה היום, שהוא צח לג נג, והוספנו על העיקר שהוא זג לב, and יוצא מן החשבון 105 מיילים ושבע ושלושים חלקים, וחמש 20 שניות, סימנם קופי לז חג. ונמצא מקוימה במהלך אמצעי בתחילת ליל זה, תחילת ליל זה, guys, doesn't mean when it gets dark, means 6 p.m. Doesn't mean when it gets dark, because getting dark is connected to something altogether differently. And we all know that summer, it gets dark. If you're living in the northern part of the Kava Mashve, it gets dark much later. And winter, it gets dark much earlier. Beginning of the night means 6 p.m. Now, what we just said before, it's not about Shkia, it's about 6 p.m. Right, during the spring and during fall, right, during the winter, as we'll learn later on. Because don't forget, every time you hit 360, you go back to number 1. The numbers won't get so crazy. Every galgal has its own emsa. Now, the emsa of the yareach, which are the same words that Rambam is using for the emsa shemesh, by the Rambam means something different, as we'll see. So, for the cheshbonis you need when you're cheshboning other of the shiva koich v'leches, as long as you know how much does it move every day. But again, this is the main thing is the chap that you can't say where is it in the mazalis. The question is for whom, from where, by the sun. From the center of the sun is one from where, and the center of the world is another from where. The Teda ha'ikar shlemenu tasku, u'tekabitz mahalcha l'chol hashana v'hayomim shetirtza v'toyser ala ikar. Now yetzel l'cham v'koyve v'mahalchem soy. V'chein taseh v'goy v'Hashem toyser v'mahalcha v'yisman yomim hashana v'ala ikar. Yetzel l'cham v'koyve v'Hashem shlois hashana shetirtza. Chein im tirtza lasis l'chol ikar acher. If you want to make another beginning date, the Rambam says, knock yourself out. Gesundheit, hey, right? If you want to make another ikar doesn't mean an ikar like ikar, right? The ikar is we should be a good chassid. The ikar meaning a beginning date. Or in the beginning of 100 from every 100 years. If you want to make every century, make another ikar. The Rambam says he gives you the shul. So the shul's biyadcham. Just don't make a mistake. Because if you make a mistake in the beginning, that's our mistake. Then the ganze meise is verstehst es simchas Torah. Then you dance akofis, understand with a lot of l'chaim, it counterbalances all the mistakes. The intensely so ikar shatas lemenu mishon mishavu koydem ikar zeh oy lachagam mishon ikar zeh haderach yudua ketzan yader kvar yodato v'halach hashemesh l'shona sedura u'mahalcha l'tisha v'esem yoyim u'mahalcha l'yom echad and v'dav yudua shehashana shechotshel shleinim ki yiseda al sedura l'koyim echad. Because the guys, we're speaking about how much does it move every day. So when people hear a year, don't forget that not every year has the same number of days. So don't say after 10 years. It's a wrong way of cheshboning because every year is a different type of year. Well, which means 129, 130, 129, 130 consistently. You say 30 days. Which means nowadays both cheshbon and kislev have 30 days. Here you say also 31 days. In both these cheshbon and kislev have only 29 days. Here you say also tishan esrei. Now toitzi mahalach emsa shemesh l'chol hashana v'hayomim shetirtza and v'toisev al ikar she'asinu yetzel l'cha emsa l'yom shetirtza mishana mabois v'tas ois hayom ikar oy tigra ho emsa she'yitzes minu ikar she'asinu yetzel l'cha ikar l'yom shetirtza mishana she'avu v'tas ois emsa ikar uchazeh tasa be'emsa hayoreya v'sharak yichavim im yu yuduim l'cha that shekeshem shetei the emsa Hashem shlachol yoim shetirtza miyom avoyim kach tei the emsa shol yoim shetirtza miyomim she'avru. You can go frontwards, you can go backwards. Now we're starting with the third chapter.
Yes. In 10 seconds. In our words, we go. The beginning is the emtzai, right? The the way
Well,
the Shem sees itself, right?
Yeah.
Go on.
No, continue. What are you saying? Correct.
Okay, so
Yakir, in order, the goal is to know from
The
where
mol-
we're looking in Eretz Yisrael, which is what we're calling the Amiti. I have to know like this, that whenever the sun and the moon are mamish one under the other, that is where the moon will disappear, and shortly afterwards I'll have the moilet. But for me, so I have to know where the sun is, vis-a-vis the mazalas. I have to know where the moon is, vis-a-vis the mazalas. But this word, this line is inaccurate, because to know where the sun is vis-a-vis the mazalas, wait,
and
you have to know where the sun is in the Mahalach and Soy first. And
then
now the next chapter is going to tell you it's a big cheshbon that the Rambam makes easy for us. How do we know how to translate that in the Mahalach Hamid? Now, just to know that the max distance, the max between the Goyva Hashemish, when you're mamish by the Goyva Hashemish, and us vis-a-vis the Mazolis is 2 degrees, but it's not always going to be 2 degrees. Another thing, there's going to be 2 points in the circle where we will have exactly the same. We will have the same degree. And then it's going to start to vary. Now, for that, I know on the Chabad I'm going to have Matriach to Mechila, but I want to explain anything that I said wrong or lie. It's on me. And Rabbi Lush, when he's here, he corrects me. He corrected me a few times. Sometimes he ran out. So don't think if I made a mistake and he didn't correct it that he did a mistake. I made the mistake. Now here, if we can pick up the camera, we're going to have the next amazing picture that Rabbi Lush drew again 40 some years ago. Let's see if we can get this over here. We can get this over here. Just another good illustration with greater detail, how we're putting the outer black circle as the mazolis. We're putting over here number 1, which is the beginning of Mazel Tov. And just for you to see that if you're standing on the earth and you're looking straight, then you're looking over here. If you're standing over here, then you're going to be looking down to see this point over here. Especially, it's simple when you chap it. When you're playing pool, like you're getting the angle where you're standing from. You have to know where you are to know the angle to see where you're placing it on. And as also as we explained, that not only will it affect the angle, but when we speak about how many degrees doesn't move, there's a huge difference vis-a-vis where is the Goyva Hashem, as we explained. The further the sun is away from the earth, it's moving the same amount of space, it's moving the same amount of miles, it's moving the same amount of shetach, but it's covering less degrees. Now, the Rambam makes a simple cheshbon, giving us for every, I think, 10 degrees, how much does that change? Really, you have to divide the circle into 4, not into half and half. Because when you go from the highest point, only 90 degrees, that is where it's covering the least amount of degrees. As you're going from the middle, from here until the other side, it's catching up. And whatever it lost in one, it will compensate on the other. It's always going to hit. When you're coming to the center, whether the center and the top or the center and the bottom, it will be b'diyuk the same. It's going to be the same. The same place where the sun will appear on the mazolis, when you're standing here, will be exactly the same place when you're standing here, when these two are aligned, both in the north and in the south. So this is, to the best of my limited ability, the most I can explain.
I feel I'm a little bit to get it. A little bit.
I know. I'll tell you the difference is that you are stuck with me and I have Rabbi Lush. That's the difference. But no. Another thing is, just to say, some people should not get frustrated that when the Rebbe came up with the mitzvah of the Rambam, that it was he, that Mamash, from his kindness of his heart, he's a working man. You guys understand this. Not a Magid Shir, not a Rosh Yeshiva, and he undertook to learn this and to teach this. And I had the chus to sit with him, I think, for 2 or 3 years. First of all, some of these ideas, somehow they fly out of the head. It's a different type of logic. Everything is spherical. We're not used to spherical. We're not familiar with this type of space. And when you learn it and you hear it again, you have to hear it again and again. And every year you learn it over, that is when you'll chop it. This is not something that people should expect. Now, if there would have been, and this should be made, a real professional model, which we don't yet have, if you would see it, for this, we say that 1 picture is worth 1,000 words. If this would be presented in a real model, not in a drawing, which is not spherical, it's amazing how much easier this will be. And a big yashikach to Chabad.org. If I'm not mistaken, in the Hagdama to every chapter, they have a beautiful computer-generated model pointing out the nakudas that are going to be covered in the chapter. And it's going to be very helpful to go through that. And everyone will find some people are very good at him.
He did one. Hillel Skolnick has some videos on Chabad. He has amazing videos of this.
Could be. Rabbi Lush told me that the sefer that he learned from was Tchunas HaShamayim. Now, you never know. Could be for you, will be the best source. Could be it's going to be the worst source. Everyone should find which oisius work. And today, again, Baruch Hashem, the good part of technology to listen from a shir from one, shir from the other. This is something that when you hear from different people, everyone is seeing it a little bit from a different angle. We're seeing the same thing from a different angle. You'll get it better. You'll chop it better. Okay, the 13th chapter is now going to tell us how to bring the place of the sun from the Mahalach Emtsoi to the Mahalach Hamiti, which is what we are looking for. Prior to going to the moon, we have to know from where I'm looking, where is the sun? Now, just to get familiar with the words, and there's a trick here. That Rambam will be using sometimes the same words by the moon, but by the moon, the same word means something else. We're learning the meaning of the word maslul as the Rambam understands it vis-a-vis the sun. The goiva hashemesh is in one place. Where is the shemesh in the goiva hashemesh? The goiva hashemesh can be, like we said, something if it's moving, because the blue is moving. There is what part of the sphere is the part where the goiva hashemesh is the farthest from the earth, but the sun is moving in it. Yakir, you got that? I'm going to go back.
No, I'm actually, no, not at all.
Okay. See, I have the luxury of having Rabbi Lush repeating this to me 50 times. I cannot expect that you should chop it. Yeah, here we go. So, here we go. When the blue is as it is in this picture, and guys, just appreciate how the earth is not in the center of the red ring, but the red ring, as time goes on, slowly, the goiva will be here, the goiva will be there, but where the goiva is, has nothing to do with where the sun is. The sun is moving in this. In other words,
but how can we assume that the shemesh is not where the gova is, Rabbi?
No. The goiva shemesh is where is the red vis-a-vis the blue, which means where is the red vis-a-vis the earth.
Oh.
It's like where is the track? Go ahead.
The goiva shemesh in plain words are at the place where if the sun would have been there, it would have been the farthest away from the earth. But the red circle, you see the red gargle, it goes around the whole time, and the sun is part of the red circle. So because the red circle circles, so the sun will sometimes be very far away from us, and sometimes the sun will come to the other side, which is in our times in the south, which the sun will be close to us. So when the sun is further away, it'll go slow. When the sun is going, in the south, where it's closer to us, it will look to us that it's going much faster.
Okay.
And the beauty of technology is that Rabbi Lush gave the words. It's good to hear it many times. So pause the video and replay later and hear it and hear it and hear it, and you'll chop it. Okay, now. So again, just the words. Maslul is a word that's used to know how far is the sun away from the goiva hashemesh. The menas hamaslul will therefore mean what difference is there vis-a-vis the mazalas, where the sun is on the mazalas by the emtsoi, versus where will the sun be on the mazalas for the amiti. So we mentioned it can be 2 degrees apart. But that's the most off it can be. It's not always going to be 2 degrees apart. Many times it's going to be much less than that apart. much less than that apart. You understand? So you know the maslul. You then will have to make the manasa maslul to know. You can't just say, well, if the center of the red is 2 degrees, just make the 2 degrees. It won't be that way.
Manasa maslul, the portion that we fix.
The manasa maslul has to be fixed. The portion of the maslul that has to be fixed in order now to know how to get to the emsoi. How to get to the amiti. Thank you. So let's go. Perish leisha asan. Halach alef. Im tirtze leide mokem Hashem shu amiti b'chol yom shetirtze. First of all, like we learned in the previous chapter, toitzi tchila mekoym emsoi lois hayon. You have to first know where it is in the emsoi, and then not now. But toitzi mokem goyva hashemesh. You have to know where the goyva hashemesh is. And I know Yakir, you asked the question, but the goyva hashemesh is not where the shemesh is where the red circle is this time of the Zman vis-a-vis the earth. Is the Goyva HaShemesh all the way to the north? What's the farthest high point of the Goyva HaShemesh vis-a-vis the earth? It has nothing to do with where the sun is. And now the Tigra Magam Goyva HaShemesh from where the sun is vis-a-vis the Goyva HaShemesh, that's called the Masal HaShemesh. Now halacha beis v'tira kama milos u Masal HaShemesh. Imaya Masal pachas v'meir shmona milos. If it's less than 180 degrees, the sun is less than 180 degrees. If the sun is somewhere in between here and there, if it's in this 180 degrees, and the key, there's 2 parts here. The ikar will be the speed that then you'll have to deduct it. It's going to be deducted from the on the other side, more than 180 degrees until 360. Notice, what are you doing? Are you diminishing? Are you adding? Are you going to be, which direction are you moving in the mazolos? Because you are, well, depends where the sun is. It depends where the sun is vis-a-vis where the Goyva Hashemesh is.
All right, you mean relative speed? Isn't the speed the same? This is relative to the observer, correct?
So the speed is the same, not only relative, like this is important, Kevin. The speed is always the same. The speed is always the same. The sun is moving by God exactly. The speed is not, the miles is the same. Very good, very good. The distance is the same. The speed. Rabbi Zajac has a great example with the airplane. Let's hear it directly from the master.
When a plane goes, they say you can go the same speed, but when it goes high in the sky, you're moving. But if that plane would have gone much lower, then if it goes even slower, it will speed by you in a second. The same
that's
thing
relative to the observer. The observer sees a different speed depending on the distance from the object.
And it means also in degrees. Because when I put this telephone right in front of my eyes, I'm blocking 180 degrees of my world. When I put it over here, we can block only 10 degrees.
Got it.
It's getting clear. I must admit, Baruch Hashem. It's happiness.
You're telling me I want to be his Lavana. I'm doing my best. Right. So Toisev and Nasa Maslov Amokem Shom Shom Soy Yumashi Achad Toisev all of it. Now, Vida, that's it. There's all wissen. Horeve. She'im ya Maslo Meyo Shmoyim B'Shavim. Oy Shloish Meyo B'Shavim. If, like we pointed out before, if there's going to be 2 points in the circle where you won't have to make any cheshbon at all. Doesn't matter if you are in the Mtsoi or you are in the Miti, the appearance of where is the sun on the Mazolis will be exactly the same. You won't have to make a manas, a portion to calculate. However, Eli Yamakam Mtsoi Rakam Amit. The kind of manas amaslo like it's im yamaslo esen miles, yamanose esem chalakim. The imya esem miles, yamanose aboim chalak. The imya shloisha miles, yamanose shmoine v'chamishim chalakim. Not 2020. In other words, that's what we were pointing out over here. That since you are covering a different amount of degrees every day, so you can't make such a simple cheshbon because the proportion of the change will be affected by the Goyva HaShemesh. Farther away, closer, will be a different degree. If you have 5 miles, then like we said, many people daven this way. Now you get it where it comes from. But if you understand it, it has value. Aber als man daven, man versteht nicht kein Wort. Oh, halacha. Let me go back to a picture over here. Let me show you visually what the Rambam is trying to say, and then we'll read it inside. The Rambam wants to point out that since the amount of degrees between here and here is 1, between here and here is another, between here and here is another, don't say that the number between here and here, right? If you're going from here to here, go back and use this number. No, this will not correlate to that. This has to correlate to this. That's the best I can do with the picture, and let's go read it inside. Very good. Halacha, hey, guys, it's good. The camera is good because I need it, like, say,
if you keep it at the formula.
Rabbi Lush had to repeat it 50 times, so he has patience. My it's being filmed. Just replay it. If I made a mistake as Achenvei, I really apologize. But if I said it correct, then it's good.
We have to view it as a formula. We don't have to understand the why behind it.
No. It's good to understand why behind it, but correct.
Disagree.
Okay, very good. Halacha. Tigna oisoi. How many miles deducted from the 360? And then you'll know the menasa maslo. Then you'll know the menasa. Now you can say 200 miles, simple. 180 plus 20. Say 20, not 20. The degrees that was covered in the first 20 is not going to be the same number of the degrees over here. So what you do is you deduct the 200 from the 360. So now you have how much? Now you have 160. The kvar daino shemenas mea the shishim miles is shnai v'arbaim chalakim. So now you'll know that the nas hamosayim will be shnai v'arbaim chalakim. Halacha v'atchein why maslo shalosh meis miles tikro isem shalosh meis v'shishim. You showed only shishim. Now you know from the other side shemenas shishim miles is mila achas ve'echad v'arbaim chalakim. Cheni menas shalosh meis miles al derech zu b'chol minyan. Halacha 7. And the kvar yodano shemenas shishim mila achas ve'echad v'arbaim chelek and umenas shivim mila achas hi mila achas ve'echad v'chamishim chelek. So now, in other words, what do you do? The Rambam gave numbers of 10, 10, 10, or 20, 20, 20. What do you do on between it? So nimsa bein shtei hamonis asar chalakim, and that's good enough, even though it's not accurate for our goal of knowing the Mailad. We're accurate. L'fi cheshbon hamaylas yeh l'chol mayla chelek echad v'yamanas hamasnu shu chamesh v'shishim mayla achas v'shishim v'arbaim chalakim. Halacha ches v'chein ilu v'ya masnu sheva v'shivim hoysem and nasi mayla achas v'shmoina v'arbaim chelek. For example, Allah in 9, now we're going to that meeting. When by the way, that Shana Zu was Dalit Tov Kuf Lamed Ches. Toitzi Emsa Shemesh Tchila first Emsa Shemesh. And the Rambam already told us in the last chapter how you will find out that it's going to be Kufei Lamed Zayin Chafei K'Meshuriyah. Now the next thing is, where's the Goy Vashemesh? Not where the sun is in the Goy. Where's the Goy Vashemesh? And you're going to find out that it's Pei Vav Mem Hei Chav Gimel, vis-a-vis the Mazolos. And now v'tigra Mokem HaGoy V'Meno Emsa. Where's the sun itself? That's the Maslul, and that's 18 miles. U'shnayim v'chamishim chalakim, u'shnei shniyos, yisimanim, yudches nabat. Now the Rambam says that comes to a certain sub fraction that you don't have to make a cheshbon in. Val takvid b'chol masnol ala chalokim. Ella imiu. If the guys, you have 60 chalokim in every mile. I want to know not every chelik 30. Is it in the first half or in the second half? If it's less than the 30, then ignore it. And if it's 30 or more, then make it into 1 mile. The toys of oisal me and a mile samasl, and it's going to work. And it's going to work. Mamish, when you're standing on the earth, it will give you the makim Hashem Shlamit. Lefika chia masl zeh sha esri milos. V'tia manosi ela derech shaviyanu shmoina ushloishim chalokim. Halacha yud ofisha masl hazeh. Hayapachas umei ushmoinim. The numbered example of halacha 9. Therefore, tikra hamana shehi shmoina ushloishim chalokim emsa shemesh. And you're going to yeshad mei ava arba milos. V'tisha v'chamishim chalokim v'chamish v'esrim shniyos simanem kuf daled nun tes chafei. V'nim samakim Hashem Shlamit b'chil. The bottom line is, what are the shniyos? Doesn't matter. And then God willing, in the next chapters, which will be mamish like Yehuda Ma'israel, make him into a chelik. And the final halach of this chapter, now you will also know Teda Yoim Hatkufa or Amiti called Kufa Shatirza. Bein Tkufa is Habois Acher Iker Zesh Remenu Ischanu. Bein Tkufa Shavarno Mishanam Akadminiyos. The word Tkufa means the beginning of the season of spring. And everyone says, yeah, the Tkufa is when the sun is in the beginning of Mazel Taleh. But it should become clear that such a statement is very good if you want to be vague. But it's not good enough, because when you say the sun is in the beginning of Mazel Taleh, Upa is in the beginning of the Mazel Taleh from the Emsoi, or is it from the beginning of the Amiti? And it's amazing. You know, sometimes the Tkufa will begin not when you think it begins, not when you think it should have begun, because of the rules that we learned above. We are moving on to today's third chapter. Today's third chapter is Perek Arba also. And as far as the sun is concerned, the moon is a lot more freilach. Beginning with that the sun, we said, only has 2 galgalim. Rabbi Lush gave it the blue and the red. His chiddush. It's not blue, it's not red. But we're just as a point of reference. Now, the moon has 4 galgalim, but it's very different than the 2 galgalim of the sun. You see, when we spoke about the 2 galgalim of the sun, it was very simple. Very simple, meaning that we put the red inside the blue. That means the movement of the blue affects the red. When it comes to the moon, here we have the picture. The final time we're going to have to be Matriach Rabbi Lush to pick up the camera for Chabad.org. Here we go. The moon is on the first dalgal over the earth. Here you see this path, this beautiful path that he drew. This is really 3 galgalim. 3 galgalim. Now, we're not going to go into how quick does each galgal move, but what we will do now is explain how there is a sum total of the 3 galgalim. There is a sum total of these 3 galgalim. All of them, this galgal...
Of what? What do you mean sum total?
They're moving. They're moving means like this, Yakir. The moon is in the galgal. The moon is affixed in the galgal. I want to know where the moon is vis-a-vis the mazalis. Whenever the moon vis-a-vis the mazalis and the sun vis-a-vis the mazalis will be exactly in the same place, the moon will not be visible. And shortly thereafter, whether it is 6 hours, it's shaykh to see the moon again, which is the goal. Went to see the moon. We said, when we gave the intro, that the galgal of the moon is moving around 13 degrees a day. It's not wrong to make that general statement. But really, you have to now go into a detail, at least beginning with this chapter. Number one, there are 3 galgalim that have the moon in it. But now look at the moon itself. You see this over here? There is a little mini galgal. And the mini galgal is moving. See how it's almost impossible to give the right answer. Because if you're going to say it's moving from east to west, then when you go into the other part of it, it's going from west to east.
You have to say relative to who?
So like this, until now, okay, Van, it was relative to us is always one movement, either east-west or west-east. That's because we are in the center of everything. So the galgal al-yomi is moving east-west. The galgal of the sun is moving west-east. Here, since we're not in the center of it, so when we're standing on the earth and we're looking up at it, so if the moon is here, well, it's moving this way when it's on the top 180, and it's moving in the opposite direction when you're in the bottom of it. So remember that. You have the movement of the three. The little one is being carried along in the three. And in this chapter, we're not going to focus on the movement of the little one. We're going to put the dot in the middle of the middle one. The moon is not the dot. And we want to know how quick is the little one moving? Is the little dot moving? The little dot is the sum total of the three. That is what we will have in this chapter. So understand what we have to do. We have to speak about the first three, placing the moon theoretically in the center of it. Then we're going to move on in the next chapters that the moon is not on the center of it. The moon is on the edge of the little galgal. So if you want to know where the moon is in the galgal halavana, Yakir, you have to separate the three from the one. You have to separate Rabbi Lush, Sheping Nachas, or you're saying, oh, Geval. It's one of the two. I hope you're Sheping Nachas. Okay, let's go. So this chapter has 6 halachas. And the Rambam begins. No, halacha Hayoreya. How many names does the moon have in the Torah? Who knows? Who remembers? 4. Now you know why. Hayoreya. Shnei mahalchem emtsoim yesh loy. Hayoreya.
What are they?
Sehara. And if I would remember the 4th, I would have said it. I jumped ahead because I forgot. So now I forgot. So let's go 1 second. It's Levana, Yareach, Sihara. There's another. And then we learned to some Hasidus. And Mukhayr, it's connected to this. And if not, I stand corrected. Okay. Really, the 2 Mahalchim are not 2, they're 4. But the 3 make a sum total. Chaps, like we learned by the sun. The moon, the red and the blue are moving in the same direction. The blue is moving so slow. Say that when we gave the 13 be'erach, it's a sum total. It's a sum total. I'm by the sun. The nun test ches. Here, the sum total will only be about the 3. 1 mahalach. But the moon itself is mesabed begalu cotton makeves oilam she'ena makeves oilam. The little one. That's why Kevan, right, when we were trying to say in what degree is it going, and we say, yeah, it's going from Mizrach to Ma'ariv. Well, it's going from Mizrach to Ma'ariv only on the top. It's going in the bottom. It's going like everything else, not the Galgal Hayomi, like the other Galgal Hashemesh and the Galgal of the Levana that we're going to be speaking about. It's ironically going from Ma'ariv to Mizrach. Things are going in the opposite way than it looks. Everything is the opposite of what it looks. That's the world. Now, guys, see, that's the beauty. The Rambam used the word maslul in the previous chapter. Remember the maslul and the manasa maslul. The Rambam chose these words, and he's taking the same word, and it means something else by the moon. The Rambam doesn't want us to fall asleep. The Rambam is a master teacher. He wants us to keep us on our toes. So whenever you hear the word...
Sahar is the last name.
Huh?
Sahar. Sahar is the last name for the moon.
Well, that's Kevan that has some Persian backgrounds, that has some Arabic backgrounds.
Arabic.
They steal everything from us. See, how does Aramaic? It's our language. Very good. Aramaic.
And the thing is just 3, Rabbi. It's just 3. Sahar, Yareach, Levana.
So I stand corrected. So now we said it's 3 and 1. Forget about the 3. That's why there's 3 names to the moon. Okay, so Zayn Azoy, Gesundheit, and if I'm wrong, Gesundheit. The main thing is to learn the simcha over here. Now, so again, guys, the Emsa Hamaslul. Again, I want to point out the picture. This point is the Emsa Hamaslul. It's very important. This point means the moon is really not here. The moon is somewhere on the edge of this little guy. But the Rambam is not going to speak in this chapter about the little one. What is the sum total amount of distance, of degrees that the Galgal Hayorech is moving, which is the sum total of the 3, which is schlepping within it the center of the little one. But don't forget that after you know where the center is, that's not where the moon is, because the moon is not in the center. The moon is on the edge of it. But that will leave for later, one step at a time. Magalgal akotan atzmai. Mesabe begalgal godol amakev soilum. Umahal choim soy zesh galgal akotan amakev soilum. That's called the emsa yoreya. Emsa yoreya. Mahalach emsa yerech b'yom echad. How much does the emsa yerech go every day? That little dot that they pointed out to shalish esrim milo is 13. That's a general number. Now we're going to get into an accurate number. Vasara chalakim v'chamish shloishim shniyos simonim yigi la halacha bits. Nimso mahalcha vasara yamim meya ba'achas shloishim milos v'chamisha arboim chalakim v'chamishim shniyos simonim kala mahan. The nimso she'edis mahalcha v'meya yoim v'sayim v'sheva u'shloishim milos v'shmonim u'shloishim chalakim v'sholosh esrim shniyos simonim ralaz lach chag. The nimso she'edis mahalcha v'elef yoim v'sayim v'sheish milos Sheish esrim milos u'shloishim v'esrim chalakim v'chamishim u'shniyos simonim riv chagam. The nimso she'edis mahalcha ba'aseres alafim yoim sholish milos u'shmoina v'chamishim chalakim v'esrim u'shniyos simonim ganachach. The Rambam wants to get us familiarized in taking a number and just getting used to what a 10 and a 50 and 100 and 1,000. We should go backwards and forwards, get used to that. The nimso she'edis mahalcha b'tishim esrim yoim. Shteim ve'esrim mailois ve'shisha chalakim ve'sheish ve'chamishim shniyos simonam chag v'nav. In other words, v'nimsa that she'edis mahalcha b'shana sedura sholosh meyos va'arba va'arboim mailois ve'shishim ve'esrim chalakim ve'sholosh va'arboim shniyos simon lahem shmad. Interesting word. Chag mag v'al zu tichbel l'chomi and yonim v'shalom shetitz. Halacha. Now. How much does it go every day? Like we said, sholish esrei mailos. The Rambam speaks. First is the sorry. How much is the speed of the 3? The speed of the 3 is 13, right? 13 and be'erech 10 plus. How much is the speed of the little one? That's the halacha number 3. How quick is the little one turning? Again, from which direction? It depends. Is it in the top or is it in the bottom? But before in the top and the bottom, that means how much is it going further or closer? Top or bottom, mizrach, ma'arif, mizrach is mamish opposite directions. Amazing. How quick is it going? Also 13, but here it's 13, 3 plus. 13 miles, 3 chalakim, ba'arba v'chamishim shniyah simonim, yag ganad. The nimsa mahalochoi of the little guy. Basara yamim meo shloishim milos v'tisha shloishim chalakim v'shniyah simonim kal lat, which is unusual that we have a precise number. The nimsa sha'ar mahalchim meo yoim asayim v'sheish v'esrim milos v'tisha v'esrim chalakim v'sholosh v'chamishim shniyah simonim rachav chat nag. The nimsa she'eris mahalchim elef yoim meo v'aba milos v'shmonim v'chamishim chalakim v'chamishim shniyah simonim kad nachan. The nimsa she'eris mahalchim be'aseres alafim yoim Sholosh meis and teisha v'esrim milos u'shmonim v'arbam chalakim v'esrim shniyah simonim shachat machach. The nimso she'eres al mahalche b'tisha v'esrim yoim shmonim v'esrim milos u'shloishim v'chamishim chalakim v'arba shniyah simonim yach magad. Halacha dalid the nimso she'eres mahalche b'shana sedura sholosh meis v'chamish milos u'shloish esri shniyos v'loi chalakim simonim shayag mokim emtza hayoreach. Like we had shoya b'tchilas lel chamishi. Shu'iker lechashboinas elu b'mazal shoy is maila achas is giving the beginning point. V'arboa osar chalakim v'shalosh v'arboim shniyos simonam la yad mag. The emsa hamaslul choye v'ikir zeh arba u'shmoinim mailis u'shmoinim v'esrim chalakim u'shtayim v'arboim shniyos simonam pad chach mab. Achar sheteida mahalach emsa hayoreach, which is the total of the 3, and the emsa shu'iker shu'olav taisid and the beginning date. So now you'll know Teida Makoim Emsa Yerech B'chol Yom Shatirtza Al Derech Shosisa B'Emsa Hashemish, like we had in the previous chapter. V'achar Shatoitzi Emsa Yerech V'Tchilas Halal Shatirtza. Now he's B'Einem B'Hashemish V'da B'Eza Mazel Hi. Halacha Hey Im Hoisa Hashemish Mechatzi Mazel B'Gman Chatzi Mazel Telem Taniach Emsa Hayerech K'may Shehi V'Im Tia Hashemish Mechatzi Telat Tchilas Mazel To'imim Toisi Al Emsa Yerech Chamish Asar Chalakim. The Rambam is trying to point out that for you to see the new moon, as we spoke about in the introduction, you see it in the beginning of the month, the moon is going to be towards the east of the sun. So first sunset. Now, how much time after sunset? That's what we're talking about over here. Can you see the moon? No.
It's 6 o'clock.
We made a cheshbon until 6 o'clock p.m. The problem is that summer and winter, sunset is going to be a lot later. Now, something you can only see the moon after sunset. After the sun sets, if it takes another 2 hours for the sun to set, the more it takes time for the sun to set, the bigger the moon is growing. The bigger the moon is growing, and that's what the Rambam is talking about. 15:30, 15:30. אם תהיה השמש בתחילת מזל ארי ועד חצי מזל בסולה, תוציא עולם סיירי 15 חלקים. אם תהיה השמש בחצי מזל בסולה.
Because it goes till 10, you divide 10 and 24, so it comes out every hour.
Rabbi Lush is going to add a very important ikid over here. No, zog.
By 24 hours, so each hour the moon travels 30 degrees, 30
chalakim.
So all the cheshbonos when we add, when we want to know in a certain day when where will be the moon, where will be the sun. So we add full days from a certain day till the day that we want to know what's going to happen then. So when the days finish in Moedas, finished by 6 o'clock in the afternoon. But 6 o'clock in the afternoon won't always be the time that we want to see the moon. Sometimes 6 o'clock in the winter, it will be already too late. 6 o'clock will be already now after the Shkia. But in the summer, it'll be the opposite. So 6 o'clock will be now before the Shkia. So in other words, if we know that the distance between the moon and the sun, so we can, in the summer, we have to add more distance from the moon to the sun, because the Shkia of the sun will be an hour later.
And exactly. So now we're telling how much you have to add. All of this is based on the cheshbon that every hour the moon is traveling a half a degree. A half a degree is 30 chalakim. The imti Hashem shvachatzi maznayim atchilas masal keshes. Tigra me'emtza yirech 15 chalakim. The imti Hashem atchilas masal kshat atchilas masal dli. Tigra me'emtza yirech 30 chalakim. Imti Hashem atchilas masal dli atchilas dagim. Tigra me'emtza yirech 15 chalakim. All because of the fact they can only see the moilad after sunset, and sunset is not going to be every time. It's not going to be the same time, and the later sunset then the larger the moon is going to grow. Now the final halacha is, what is the optimum time to see the moilad? Because I'm not trying to look. I can see the new moon the whole month, but when we're speaking about the new moon is that's barely moving away from the sun. What's the optimum time? So like this, when the sun is in the sky, the light of the sun will blind you. You won't see the little moon. If you're going to wait for it to get dark, by then the moon also set, because the moon is only a little bit behind the sun. See, sunset, even right after sunset, there's too much light in the sky. The optimum time to be able to see the moilad is in the 20 minutes. In the beginning of the month, after 20 minutes, it's too late. Early after Shkia, too much light. That's going to be the final halach. Halach that will be called the Emsa Hayoreach La'achar Shkia Sachama, which will be Bekemoi Shlisha Ba'isazman Shotoyse Emsa Loi, and that's called the Emsa Hayoreach L'Shas Horeiyah, which is 20 minutes after Shkia.